Good evening. I'm coming to you on March 10th with my nightly insights on the situation in the Ukraine. Um, I just have seen incredible footage of an armored column, a Russian armored column, being destroyed by the Ukrainians. And this took place in near Kiev. There's other footage a little further off to the northwest, also showing Russian tanks being destroyed by anti-tank weapons wielded by the Ukrainians. Again, the battlefield is static, and this is not good news for the Russians. They have not been able to make advances. Even in the south, they seem to have been stalled. I understand that the British are providing a very sophisticated Star Streak anti-aircraft air defense system, which is a man pod. That is, it can be fired effectively by one man. This does not bode well for the Russian air war, which has been ineffective so far. At best, it has some limited air superiority over certain areas of the battlefield, but it cannot claim widespread air superiority, nor and certainly not full air dominance. And again, boding badly for the Russians. There is a humanitarian catastrophe taking place. Putin has fallen back on the brutal tactics of the Soviets. And that is, when they're stymied or stalled on the battlefield by conventional forces, they strike out savagely against civilians. And the attack on the maternity hospital in Mariupol indicates that there are very few limits to Russian brutality. And I think the whole world has to take note of this and provide the Ukrainians with everything they need. I did see Vice President Harris go to Poland and speak on the quashed offer of Polish MiG-29s to the Ukrainians, a kind of brokered deal that the United States would take them at a German air base and then would deliver them to the Ukrainians. That may not be possible, but certainly the Poles will get those MiGs to the Ukrainians. There is an uproar, bipartisan uproar, that this deal has been quashed. There is a sense that if the Ukrainians need MiG-29s, then we should deliver MiG-29s. I fully concur with that. As I said a few videos ago, Putin is already provoked. We're not going to provoke him any further because he doesn't have, I mean, we will provoke him, but he doesn't have the wherewithal to respond to that provocation. He is getting everything he can handle in the Ukraine. Anything else is beyond any Russian capabilities. And there's no doubt in my mind that a shipment of MiG-29s to the Ukrainians would not, well, it might provoke him, but he can't do anything about it. He just does not have the military wherewithal to respond. His military is at best failing, and he cannot divert any other resources to respond to a shipment of MiG-29s by, I mean, the assumption is that he would widen the war. He can't widen the war. The war is going horribly for the Russians. And the idea that Putin would respond to a shipment of MiG-29s by expanding or escalating the conflict is ludicrous. It just does not make sense. So we should get the MiG 29s to the Ukrainians. I agree with some of the military assessments that other weapons are proving much more effective. And certainly, if they get the British air defense system, that is a very, very sophisticated air defense system, and that will cause the Russians no ends of troubles. But if the Ukrainians want the MiG 29s, we should deliver the MiG 29s. It is an embarrassment on the West that we are shying back from delivering any weapon systems that the Ukrainians are asking for because we will provoke Putin. Okay, we provoke him, and so what? He won't do anything. He can't do anything, and we have to realize that. It harkens back to the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, and we know now that Nikita Khrushchev was bluffing. There was nothing he could do. If the U.S. had chosen to invade Cuba and destroy the missile sites there, Khrushchev would not have unleashed World War III. He was plainly bluffing. Putin must think of himself as a great poker player, but any analysis of his military capabilities has to show that he cannot escalate this war. It's impossible. He will lose in the Ukraine, either facing conventional Ukrainian military forces or by a prolonged insurgency that will take thousands of Russian lives, as well as, unfortunately, Ukrainian lives as well. But ultimately, the Russians will lose, one way or the other. I'd like to turn now to the situation. An analysis of Putin himself. I saw an article where Gary Kasparov Gary Kasparov, the former world chess champion and Putin opponent, who was driven out of Russia by Putin, speaking about him and saying that Putin had no ideology. He likened Putin to a gangster, a Mafia Don, and said that once his revenues dried up, he would be basically removed by his coterie, by his flunkies, because he could no longer satisfy their kleptocracy. This is all of Putin, that he did not have an ideological center like a Stalin. I tend to disagree with that. I think Putin has a nationalist ideology, and it does blend with this kleptocracy, so that Kasparov is somewhat correct in his assessment. But I think he fails to recognize that Putin also has the kind of great Russia nationalism, and this idea that I've mentioned before, that Russia is the third Rome, and that it has a mission in the world, and that the West has conspired over the centuries to destroy that mission. And although he doesn't defend the Soviet system, he did defend the ability of the Soviet Union to crush enemies and face off effectively against the West. And so that he does have this ideology. I mentioned Ivan Ilyin as the kind of intellectual guru, philosophical guru for Putin. And Ilyin, as I mentioned before, argued from a Hegelian standpoint, a historism of the idea that Russia was a manifestation of the divine will to act out itself in history. And Russia has always had the third Rome concept. And Putin does share this. And in fact, if he has any support in Russia, it is because he echoes this sentiment. And there are significant numbers of Russians who do find some resonance in that argument. I think that number is diminishing, but nonetheless, they remain. I saw a poll on how much can you trust polls in Russia, but that 58% of Russians polled supported the war. That would leave 42% either against it or without any opinion. I think this probably overestimates the level of support for the war, but there is some ideological support for the war based on this idea of Russia's mission. I think that will diminish as the body bags come home. I think that Putin has begun his long goodbye, as I said before. So I leave you now. I don't want to overextend the video.